So I'm an anthropologist, which means I spend a lot of time asking what it means to be human. Not just in a tidy academic sense, but in all its gritty, glorious contradictions. From how we've evolved to be this flawed physical species to how this physical species has moved and migrated to nearly every square inch of the earth. And not just survived in those different places, but thrived. Not because we've done the same thing in all those different places, but because we've done things differently. You see, our difference and our diversity, that's our strength. It's the reason humans can adapt, can reinvent, can make meaning out of mess. And we do it all through culture. That's how we stay connected through the hard stuff. That's how we remain resilient through challenge and change. Our culture is our symbols, structures and practices. They're our stories, our rituals, our values. It's our art, our music, our jokes. It's how we organise our experience and make sense of a complex and crazy world. And so as an anthropologist, I've spent a lot of time studying what it means to be human. And in particular, I love the arts and humanities. And they're not just a fanciful indulgence. I actually think they're essential for life. Now, I've observed this in the work that I do with an Indigenous community in South India who were slaves until recently, with young people in rural New South Wales who experienced an increase of suicide during COVID, with lived experience workers in the mental health space, with alienated, disengaged young men who are struggling to make sense of their masculinity. I've also observed this with Australian farmers who are trying to find their place in the world in the midst of massive economic, political, social and environmental change. And there's something really special about being an anthropologist in the age of social media and AI, because anthropology is not just about digging up bones or going to faraway lands. It's about understanding the present moment, our social feeds, our conversations, our workplaces, and being curious about what makes us human right here and right now. Now, even though my job is to understand the human condition, I struggle with it regularly. And that's because being human is complex and messy and hard. For example, just recently, I woke up in the depths of despair. I felt helpless. My heart was empty. And I know I'm not alone. You open your phone and there's chaos, there's war, there's division. Another politician saying the quiet part out loud. Conspiracy theories trending. Echo chambers echoing. Truth disintegrating. It's like a dystopian Netflix series, but we're not just watching it, we're in it. And we can't switch it off. And that morning, lying in my bed, my knowledge didn't bring me comfort. I didn't feel clever. I didn't feel curious. I felt done. I think the hardest part was the disappointment. You see, I believed that we were getting better, slowly, but I thought that we were becoming more inclusive, more just, more empathetic. But when Trump got re-elected, something snapped. Not because of him per se, but because of what it said about us, how deep the fractures were, how our empathy had been so compromised. And I spiraled. I doom scrolled. I ranted. It was tempting to give up, to go numb, to find distraction as the world burns down around me. But the thing that pulled me out of despair, it wasn't like a podcast or a self-help book or another influencer telling me to drink more green juice. It was Pompeii. Now, most of the time we associate Pompeii with the tragic ash-preserved bodies of the people who died, but there are also these beautiful visual representations in perfectly preserved frescoes depicting people selling goods, eating, gossiping, complaining about their own narcissistic megalomaniac politicians. But most importantly, there's people just living. And I remembered that these aren't just ancient caricatures. These are human beings just like us, the same animal, dealing with their own version of a crumbling society, their own corrupt leaders, their own misinformation, only painted on stone instead of tweeted in all caps. And all the while, the volcano was looming, but they didn't build bunkers. They didn't panic buy toilet paper. They kept showing up. They kept showing up. They were still helping each other even as Vesuvius was literally turning their world to ash. And that is humanity showing its true colours under pressure. Because when faced with crisis, it's our ability to come together and collectively make sense of our chaos to forge a way through. That's how we've survived, and that's where I found hope. You see, I remembered that the mess isn't new, the chaos isn't new. We've been here before, not just as a society, but as a species. See, hope and despair, they're not opposites, they're bedfellows. There is no despair unless you've dared to hope. It's the ache of belief betrayed. And you don't have to go as far back as the Romans to see this. I also find solace in the philosophers. For example, existentialists like Nietzsche call it amor fati, or the love of one's fate. And he didn't mean this sort of passive resignation to despair. He meant a radical affirmation that stares directly in the face of what is and loves it anyway, even the bruises. Emile Chiron went a little bit further. He didn't write to solve despair. He wrote to survive it. He said that despair is not some imperfection to overcome. It's a brutally honest companion that reveals what really matters to us. And in that revelation, there's space for hope. Not the easy, convenient kind, but the gritty, grown-up kind. The one that says, I will show up anyway, even on the days that it hurts. Now, I'm not trying to deny the awful things that humans do, right? But during famine, war, political collapse, and natural disaster, the thing that helps us survive is not brute strength, it's not violence, it's not hate. It's adaptability. It's connection. That's the real human superpower, not control or certainty or some grand 5-point plan. It's connection, messy, real, honest, sometimes awkward, occasionally infuriating, human connection. But we're taught to fear the mess, to clean it up. We carve the world up and we try to squeeze the messiness of it into these nice, neat little boxes to make it easier to understand, predict, and control, even and especially when it is unpredictable and uncontrollable. And when the world doesn't cooperate, when it's too hard, when it's too difficult, we shut down and we bury our heads in social media. We curate these perfect versions of ourselves online. Now, Hannah Arendt actually warned us about this too, about how easy it is to retreat from the world, to become passive and numb and obedient. And that's where the banality of evil creeps in, not through monsters, but through ordinary, everyday acts of disengagement. Erich Fromm said that the real problem isn't freedom, it's that we're terrified of what to do with it. And so we run to control, consumption, conformity. But none of that works because avoidance doesn't build anything, disconnection doesn't heal anything, perfection doesn't change anything, only presence does, only vulnerability does, only people do. So as we meet this moment of transition, we need to consider that the change we seek isn't going to be found in just scaling up through more policy or scaling out through more exposure, although these things are really important. It needs to come from scaling deep. By entering into the messy, uncomfortable, beautiful work of human relationships. Because transformation just doesn't come from reaching more people faster. It comes from creating depth in the spaces we already inhabit. And that's about how we show up in our families, in our classrooms, in our workplaces, in our communities, not to perform, but to practice Because deep work, it's slow, it's not sexy, it doesn't trend, it takes time and effort. It's about listening when you're tired. It's about owning up when you mess up. It's about holding space for someone else's pain and not trying to fix it. It's about letting go of being right long enough to be real. It's about choosing connection over control every single time. See, Trump's not actually the problem. He's a symptom of something that we've helped to create. Through silence, through cynicism, through conformity, through complacency. Every time we engage in performative political correctness instead of real connection, every time we opt for quick fix cancel culture instead of having that brave conversation, every time we choose comfortable echo chambers instead of the uncomfortable truth, we have helped to build this reality, one tweet, one LinkedIn post, one avoided conversation at a time. But if we built it, we can unbuild it. And here's where the hope is. Because we are not just the passive observers of this dystopian Netflix series. We're the writers, we're the producers, we're the actors, all rolled into one. And every day, with every conversation, we get to rewrite the script. And the beautiful thing about being human is that you don't need to be perfect to start. You just have to be here. Open, honest and willing. Willing to ask better questions. Willing to stay in the room when it gets uncomfortable. Willing to see the humanity of someone that you disagree with. Because in a world where the algorithm rules, the binary is a lie. Nobody is either all good or all bad. The world doesn't fit neatly into the extreme categories of woke, lefty, snowflake, or right-wing fascist. You can feel despair and still choose to hope. You can feel exhausted and still care. You can feel lost and still lead. And most of us are sort of somewhere in the messy middle, just trying to muddle our ways through. We're all walking contradictions, and that's okay. Simone de Beauvoir called that ambiguity. The tension between freedom and being limited at the same time. And it's in that ambiguity that the only honest ground for meaning resides. And that's what the humanities offer us. It's how we remember we're human. Art, history, philosophy, anthropology, these aren't just self-indulgent academic luxuries, they're tools for our survival. When the world becomes chaotic and absurd, the humanities help us name the chaos so that we can create a space to make sense, not in spite of the uncertainty, but through it. Curiosity, contradiction, complexity, creativity, compassion. This is how the humanities help us to embrace the mess as the greatest source of growth and learning. And we don't avoid it by pretending we have the answers. We hold space for each other to sit inside it. So here's my invitation. Go out there and create bubbles of hope to sit inside the mess. Immerse yourself in culture. Go to the gallery, go to the play, go to the concert. Invite your friends over to talk about art and poetry and politics. Indulge in self-reflection and philosophy. Walk in nature. Go on that holiday. Talk to someone you disagree with, not to win, but to understand. And remember, the bubbles start small, but they radiate out. So value the power of a conversation where someone feels heard, of a workplace where difference isn't feared, of a ritual, a gathering, a pause, not to escape the mess, but to embrace it, to engage in collective sense-making, and to remember that we're not alone in our struggles. Because if the long story of human evolution has taught me anything, it's that we've done it before, we'll do it again. And that, my friends, gives me hope. Thank you.